In today's video, I'm going to be showing you a few simple tips to help make your portraits pop, all within Adobe Lightroom. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so step number one is actually really easy, and that's just to go ahead and do some basic adjustments on your photo. So in order to go ahead and save time, I've actually applied one of my presets on here just to go ahead and get the ball rolling. Okay, so step number two is to bring the subject a little bit more forward, and it's actually a lot easier than you might think. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna come over here to the top right-hand side, and we're gonna click on this little circle icon, which is gonna be for our masking. Now, the masking is actually done by artificial intelligence. So basically what Lightroom is doing is it's going to go ahead and detect your subject. It can also detect the background. It can detect the sky. Don't ask me how, okay? It's magic. But the reason why we want to use this is to go ahead and select our subject and our background. That way we can make some selective edits to those specific areas to really help bring things forward and push things back. So in my panel, you can see what we were talking about. We got the different options here. And if you come down a little bit, it has people. It's already gone ahead and made that selection for you. So I'm just gonna go ahead and click on that. Now what's also neat about this is that it gives you a few different options. You have also a selection for face, skin, body skin, eyebrows, what is that? I guess that's eye selection. That's a weird way to put it. Also the iris and the pupils, the lips, and hair, which is really neat, and it makes your life a lot easier as an editor and speeds up the process. But for now, we're just gonna hit create mask. Okay, I've got my subject outline, so now I can actually come over here and start making some edits, and notice that it's only affecting my subject that it outlined. So this is really gonna help bring that subject forward. So what I'm gonna actually do is I'm definitely gonna go ahead and raise the shadows a little bit, and I like to also go ahead and raise my whites in here just to go ahead and brighten up the subject. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and create another mask, and this time we're gonna go ahead and just do select background. Okay, Lightroom has now done its magic, and now what we're gonna do with the background is we're gonna go ahead and actually bring the exposure down. Now I don't use it on my subject, but I will use it on the background. Now nothing too crazy, but you can already tell how much of a difference this has made. For example, here is without both masks, and here is with both masks applied. Okay, so the next step also has to do with masking, except this time we are going to be using the brush. The reason why I want to use the brush is because here in this picture, there's a few areas where the highlights are a little blown out, and I just only want to edit that specific part of my photo versus the entire image or my entire subject. So I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna hold the control key, because if you hold the control key, it's gonna go ahead and help you stay within your subject, versus if you don't hold that control key, it's gonna be a lot easier to get out there and select some other things going on in the background. All right, I've gone ahead and made that selection. I feel like we also need to come in here into the shirt and get a little bit of these areas because they are a little blown out as well. Okay, I have made my selections. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and bring down those highlights, and this is before and this is after. Definitely a huge difference. Now keep in mind that I did that for the highlights, but I also like to do that as well for my shadows. So for example, I know that within my subject, he's kind of got some darkness going on here in the eyes. It's nothing too extreme, but I do want to go ahead and brighten that up just a little bit. So for that, I'm actually going to go ahead and make another mask. And now we're going to go ahead and bump up the shadows and also bump up the whites. Now here is the before. And here's the after. Again, a huge game changer in your portraits. So the next step is actually a lot of fun. We're gonna be getting into the HSL panel. Now the HSL panel actually allows us to manipulate specific colors and change their hues, their saturation, or even their brightness. So as you can see, I've already gone ahead and made some adjustments, but if I were to go ahead and slide the orange all the way to the left-hand side, you're gonna see it just makes my subject look horrible. However, though, you can use this to your advantage. So what I like to do is actually look at the color wheel, because you can start to go ahead and make specific colors complement each other. For example, right now, I do think that the greens are really beautiful in this image, but what complements blue better? Orange. So what I'm gonna actually do is I'm gonna come over here to these yellows and move them over to the left-hand side. And I'm also gonna go ahead and do the same with the greens. Now, as you can see, that's starting to make a big difference, and it's actually looking really good with that blue shirt because those two colors complement each other. Now, I do think that we should go ahead and move this slider a little bit more to like an aqua-ish side. Again, kind of like a teal and orange kind of look, but not to the extreme. Now I'm gonna come over to the saturation panel, and I'm actually gonna go ahead and also bring down those yellows and greens, because I do feel like it is still somewhat competing with my subject, and I want to go ahead and bring my subject more forward. So I'm gonna go ahead and adjust the yellows over to the left. Nothing too crazy. and also the greens. And lastly, the luminance. I definitely think my subject still needs to be a little bit brighter, specifically in the face. Now we could go back to masking for that, or I can just simply use the HSL panel and come over to the luminance for my orange, slide that over to the right, and now my subject is a little bit brighter. I'm also gonna go ahead and bring down the luminance a little bit on those yellows because I feel like they're a little too bright. Same with the greens. So now let me show you the before. And here is the after. Now, I don't know about you, but that is looking pretty damn good. Okay, so the next step in this is to use the color grading panel. Now, this one is also a fun one because you are able to adjust your shadows, your midtones, and your highlights, or just the entire spectrum, but you're able to adjust those specific sections' colors, so it really kind of helps you achieve more of a cinematic look and a stylized look. So for example, I'm gonna come over here to my shadows. Now, I do want the shadows to be a little bit more on the cooler side on this photo, so I'm gonna go ahead and bump up that saturation slightly. 17 looks pretty good, but watch what happens if I take it all the way to the right-hand side. You can clearly see how this can help you achieve a cinematic look. For my personal preference, I like to be a little bit minimal on these edits. Now I'm gonna come over to the midtones. I do want my midtones to be more on the warmer side, which is gonna be the opposite of the cool side. So again, we're kind of going back to that color wheel and complementary colors. So I'm gonna go ahead and bump that up. That's actually bringing my subject more to life in the skin tones. And last but not least, we're gonna come over here to the highlights. Now with the highlights, I do like to experiment slightly, so I'm gonna go ahead and try an oranges. So again, kind of warm. That's a bit much. Let's see if we go over to the cooler section. Ooh, I actually really like that. That's looking pretty good, but I don't want to go to the extreme on my highlights. I'm gonna actually keep that lower to about 8. 8 looks pretty good. And the last one, of course, is the global panel. So if you actually use this one, it's actually gonna adjust the entire image. For example, if I move this over to the right, yeah, it's gonna make everything super warm. I really don't use the global panel too much. Very rare occasions, but it is there if you want to experiment with that. Okay, and a last tip here, I just like to go ahead and add some grain to my photos. I really like the way that it kind of gives the image some texture. So typically I do anywhere from like 10 to 20. So let's go ahead and add 20. All right, and there we go. So this is what we started with. And this is what we ended up with. Anyways, my friend, I hope that you found this super helpful. If you did, make sure to go ahead and leave a like. Make sure to subscribe for more content. And as always, stay creative, my friend, and I will see you in the next video.